The December wind cut through downtown Detroit like a blade, sending sheets of snow swirling around the towering glass buildings. Michael Harrison pulled his black wool coat tighter as he stepped out of the Renaissance Center, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The digital clock on his phone read 11:47 p.m., another late night, another deal closed, another step further away from the empty house waiting for him in Palo Alto. At 45, Michael had built Harrison Technologies from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire. Tonight's acquisition of a small AI company would add another $50 million to his portfolio, but the victory felt hollow. Everything felt hollow these days. 2 years had passed since Catherine's funeral. 2 years since cancer had stolen his wife and left him alone with 7-year-old Grace. And still, the pain hit him like a physical blow every time he let his guard down. Work was his salvation. 18-hour days, cross-country flights, boardroom battles, anything to keep his mind occupied, anything to avoid the silence of the house where Catherine's laughter once filled every room. Grace had her nanny, Mrs. Chen, and her private school, and her horseback riding lessons. She was fine. She had to be fine because Michael couldn't bear to think otherwise. The valet brought his rental car around, a black BMW 750i that looked like every other rental car in every other city. Michael tipped the young man and slid into the driver's seat, grateful for the heated leather and the purr of the engine. The hotel was only 15 minutes away, and tomorrow he'd fly back to California, back to the next deal, the next distraction. Detroit's streets were nearly empty at this hour, the snow falling steadily and beginning to stick to the pavement. Michael's thoughts drifted to Grace, probably asleep in her princess bed, surrounded by the stuffed animals Catherine had collected for her. He should call her more often, should spend more time at home, should be a better father. The guilt gnawed at him constantly, but work was easier than facing the accusation in his daughter's eyes, the unspoken question of why Daddy was never home anymore. He pulled into the hotel parking lot, a sprawling expanse of white beneath the orange glow of the streetlights. The snow was falling heavier now, and Michael hurried toward the entrance, his Italian leather shoes slipping slightly on the slick pavement. That's when he saw them. 2 small figures huddled against his car, barely visible in the swirling snow. For a moment, Michael thought he was seeing things, exhaustion and stress playing tricks on his mind. But as he moved closer, his heart began to race. 2 little girls, identical twins, were pressed against the passenger side door of his BMW, their thin arms wrapped around each other, their lips blue with cold. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old, dressed in clothes that had seen better days, thin jackets that offered little protection against the Detroit winter, worn sneakers with holes that let in the snow, knit caps pulled low over their heads. One clutched a stuffed animal, some kind of raggedy bear missing an ear. They were both shivering violently, their small bodies trembling like leaves in a hurricane. "Hey," Michael called out, his voice gentler than he'd intended. "Hey, are you okay?" The girls looked up at him with eyes that were far too old for their faces. Twin pairs of green eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion. The one holding the bear pressed her sister closer, as if trying to shield her from this tall stranger in the expensive coat. "We're cold," the first girl said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "We're really, really cold." Michael knelt down in the snow, not caring about his $1,000 suit. Up close, he could see the exhaustion written in every line of their small faces, the way their hands shook not just from cold but from hunger, from fear, from something deeper than physical discomfort. "Where are your parents?" he asked, looking around the empty parking lot. "Where's your mom and dad?" The girls looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. The one without the bear spoke for the first time, her voice even smaller than her sister's. "Mommy can't breathe anymore," she whispered. "She went to sleep and won't wake up." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He felt his chest tighten, his throat constrict with emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in months. These 2 little girls, alone in the world, just like Grace had been alone when Catherine. "What about your daddy?" he managed to ask. "We don't have a daddy," the first girl said. "Just Derek, and he said we had to leave. He said we weren't his problem anymore." Michael's hands clenched into fists. Someone had thrown these children out into the cold, left them to fend for themselves. In December, in Detroit, when the temperature was well below freezing, "What are your names?" he asked. his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "I'm Lily," said the one with the bear. "This is Rose. We're twins." "Are you going to call the police on us?" Rose asked, her voice trembling. Derek said if anyone found us, we'd get in trouble. Michael's heart broke a little more. These children, barely older than Grace, were afraid of being in trouble for being homeless, for being cold, for being alone in the world. "No," he said firmly, "you're not in trouble. You're not in trouble at all." He stood up, his mind racing. He could call the police. Let the system handle it. That would be the responsible thing to do. But something in their eyes, some echo of the fear he'd seen in Grace's face when Catherine was dying, made him pause. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Both girls nodded, so quickly and desperately that Michael felt another stab of anger at whoever had abandoned them. "Come on," he said, holding out his hands. "Let's get you somewhere warm." Lily and Rose hesitated, looking at each other again. Michael could see the debate in their eyes. Trust this stranger or stay in the cold. Survival won out over caution. "You promise you won't hurt us?" Lily asked. "I promise," Michael said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The girls took his hands, their small fingers like ice, even through his gloves. Michael led them to his car, cranking the heat up as high as it would go. In the rearview mirror, he watched them huddled together in the back seat, slowly beginning to stop shivering. "Are you really not going to call the police?" Rose asked as they drove through the snowy streets. "Not tonight," Michael said. "Tonight we're going to get you warm and fed and safe." He drove them to the nearest 24-hour diner, a bright oasis in the dark Detroit night. The girls ate like they hadn't seen food in days. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, orange juice, more food than two small children should be able to consume. Michael watched them eat and found himself remembering Grace at that age, the way she used to get syrup all over her face, the way Catherine would laugh and wipe it off with a napkin. "When did you last eat?" he asked gently. "Yesterday," Lily said around a mouthful of pancakes. "We found some crackers in a trash can." Michael had to excuse himself to the bathroom, where he splashed cold water on his face and tried to get his emotions under control. These children had been eating garbage. They'd been living on the streets, sleeping in the cold, while he'd been in boardrooms arguing over profit margins. When he returned to the table, the girls had finished most of their food and were looking at him with something that might have been hope. "What happens now?" Rose asked. Michael looked at these two little girls, so brave and fragile at the same time, and made a decision that would change all their lives. "Now," he said, "we go home." The private jet was warm and quiet, humming through the night sky toward California. Lily and Rose sat in the plush leather seats, their eyes wide with wonder at the luxury surrounding them. They'd never been on a plane before, had never imagined such wealth existed in the world. "Are you really rich?" Lily asked, her face pressed against the window as she watched the lights of cities pass below. "I suppose I am," Michael said, settling into the seat across from them. "Does that scare you?" "No," Rose said quickly. "Rich people can help people, right? That's what Mommy used to say." "Tell me about your mommy," Michael said gently. The twins looked at each other, and Lily clutched her bear tighter. "Her name was Sarah," she said. "She had pretty hair, and she sang to us at night." "She was sick," Rose added. "She couldn't breathe good. Sometimes she'd wake up and gasp for air like she was drowning." "Did she see a doctor?" Michael asked. "She wanted to," Lily said. "But Derek said doctors cost too much money. He said she was just being dramatic." Michael felt that familiar rage building again. A woman had died because she couldn't afford medical care, leaving two small children alone in the world. It was exactly the kind of injustice that had driven him to build his fortune in the first place. The belief that money could solve problems, could protect the people you love. "What happened after she died?" he asked. The girls were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Rose spoke up. "Derek said we had to leave. He said he never wanted kids anyway, that we were just extra mouths to feed. He gave us $20 and told us to figure it out." "How long ago was that?" 3 weeks, Lily whispered. "We've been sleeping in different places. Under bridges, in doorways. Last night we found your car, and the door was unlocked, so we got in to get warm." Michael closed his eyes, trying to process the horror of what these children had endured. 3 weeks on the streets of Detroit in December. It was a miracle they were alive. "You're safe now," he said. "I promise you're safe." The girls nodded, but Michael could see the wariness in their eyes. They'd been let down before, abandoned by the adults who were supposed to protect them. Trust would take time. As the plane descended toward San Francisco, Michael found himself thinking about Grace. How would she react to two strange children suddenly appearing in their home? He'd made so many promises to her after Catherine died that it would just be the two of them, that they'd take care of each other, that nothing would change. Now, everything was about to change. The car service was waiting at the airport, a black Mercedes with a driver who didn't bat an eye at the two homeless children climbing into his immaculate vehicle. Money, Michael reflected, had a way of making the impossible seem normal. The drive to Palo Alto took an hour, winding through the hills and valleys of the peninsula. Lily and Rose pressed their faces to the windows, amazed by the landscape of wealth, the sprawling estates, the manicured lawns, the cars that cost more than most people made in a year. "Is this where you live?" Rose asked as they turned into Michael's driveway. The Harrison estate sprawled across 5 acres of prime Silicon Valley real estate. The main house was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. Catherine had designed it herself, working with architects to create a home that was both elegant and welcoming. Now it felt like a mausoleum. "This is home," Michael said, though the word felt strange in his mouth. Had anywhere felt like home since Catherine died? They pulled up to the front entrance, where Mrs. Chen was waiting with a concerned expression. Michael's housekeeper and Grace's nanny had been with the family for 5 years, and she'd never seen her employer arrive home at 3 in the morning with 2 homeless children. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her slight Chinese accent making his name sound formal. "Grace is sleeping. She was asking for you earlier." Michael felt another stab of guilt. He'd been so focused on the acquisition that he'd forgotten to call Grace before her bedtime. Another promise broken, another small betrayal in a growing list. "Mrs. Chen, this is Lily and Rose," he said, gesturing to the twins. "They'll be staying with us for a while." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened, but she'd worked for wealthy families long enough to know not to ask questions. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. Shall I prepare the guest room?" 2 beds, Michael said, "and maybe some warm milk and sandwiches. I think they're still hungry." As Mrs. Chen bustled away, Michael led Lily and Rose into the house. Their footsteps echoed in the marble foyer, and he saw them looking around with the same wonder they'd shown on the plane. The house was beautiful, but it was also cold, sterile. Catherine's warmth had died with her. "Are you really going to let us stay here?" Lily asked, her voice small in the vast space. "For as long as you need," Michael said, and realized he meant it. They settled the girls in the guest room, with its king-size bed and view of the pool. Mrs. Chen brought food and warm clothes, some of Grace's outgrown things that had been packed away. As the twins ate their sandwiches and drank their milk, Michael found himself watching them with an intensity that surprised him. "Will we meet Grace tomorrow?" Rose asked. "You will," Michael said. "She's been the only child in this house for a long time. She might need some time to adjust." "Is she nice?" Lily asked. Michael thought about his daughter. Brilliant, precocious, sometimes difficult Grace. Since Catherine's death, she'd become more serious, more closed off. She clung to routines, to the familiar, to the promise that it would always be just the two of them. "She's wonderful," he said finally. "But she's also hurting." "We both are." The twins nodded solemnly. They understood hurt, understood loss in a way that most children never should. As Michael tucked them into bed, Lily reached out and grabbed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not leaving us in the cold." "Thank you for trusting me," Michael replied. He turned off the lights and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the twins curl up together in the enormous bed. For the first time in 2 years, the house didn't feel quite so empty. Grace Harrison had always been an early riser, a trait she'd inherited from her mother. At 7 years old, she was already showing signs of Catherine's sharp intelligence and strong will. She woke at 6:30, as she did every morning, and padded downstairs in her princess pajamas to find Mrs. Chen preparing breakfast. "Good morning, little miss," Mrs. Chen said, her voice carefully neutral. "Did you sleep well?" "Where's Daddy?" Grace asked, settling into her usual seat at the kitchen island. "He didn't come say goodnight." "He came home very late," Mrs. Chen said. "He's still sleeping." Grace frowned. Her father had been traveling more and more lately, leaving her with Mrs. Chen for days at a time. When he was home, he was either working in his office or staring at his computer with that sad look he got when he thought she wasn't watching. "I want to wake him up," Grace said. "Let him sleep a little longer," Mrs. Chen suggested. "He's very tired." Grace was about to argue when she heard voices from upstairs. Children's voices that definitely weren't her father's, with Mrs. Chen with wide eyes. "Who's here?" she asked. Before Mrs. Chen could answer, two little girls appeared in the kitchen doorway. They were identical twins with blonde hair and green eyes, wearing Grace's old clothes, a pink sweater and jeans that Grace remembered outgrowing last year. Grace stared at them in shock. "Who are you?" she demanded. The twins huddled together, suddenly shy. The one holding a raggedy bear spoke first. "I'm Lily. This is Rose." "What are you doing in my house?" Grace asked, her voice rising. "Why are you wearing my clothes?" "Grace," Mrs. Chen said gently, but Grace wasn't listening. "Daddy!" she screamed, jumping down from her chair. "Daddy, there are strangers in our house!" Michael appeared in the doorway moments later, his hair disheveled, wearing a t-shirt and pajama pants. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were alert, focused on Grace's distressed face. "Grace, calm down," he said, moving toward her. "Let me explain." "Who are they?" Grace demanded, pointing at the twins. "Why are they here? Why didn't you tell me?" Michael knelt down to Grace's level, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Grace, this is Lily and Rose. They needed somewhere safe to stay, so I brought them home." "But you promised," Grace said, and Michael could hear the tears starting. "After Mommy died, you promised it would just be us. You promised nothing would change." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He had promised that on the night of Catherine's funeral, when Grace had crawled into his bed and asked if they would always be alone. He'd held her close and sworn that it would always be just the two of them. Forever and always. "I know what I promised," he said quietly. "But sometimes—" "You lied!" Grace interrupted, her voice breaking. "You lied to me just like you lied about Mommy getting better." The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Michael had told Grace that Catherine would be fine, that the treatments were working, that everything would go back to normal. He'd lied to protect her, to give her hope, but in the end, he'd only made the truth more devastating. "Grace, please," he began, but she was already running toward the stairs. "I hate you," she screamed over her shoulder. "I hate you, and I hate them." The sound of her bedroom door slamming echoed through the house. Michael stood in the kitchen, feeling the weight of his daughter's anger and the confused stares of the twins. Mrs. Chen busied herself with breakfast, pretending not to notice the tension. "Are we in trouble?" Rose asked in a small voice. Michael looked at these two little girls who'd already endured so much, who trusted him to keep them safe, and felt something settle in his chest. A determination he hadn't felt since Catherine's diagnosis. "No," he said firmly, "you're not in trouble. Grace is just. She's been through a lot. She needs time to understand." "Maybe we should go," Lily said, clutching her bear tighter. "We don't want to make her mad." "You're not going anywhere," Michael said, his voice gentle but firm. "This is your home now. Grace will come around." But as he said the words, he wondered if he was making another promise he couldn't keep. Grace had been the center of his universe for 2 years, the only bright spot in a world gone dark. Now he was asking her to share that attention, to welcome two strangers into their carefully constructed life. The morning passed in careful navigation. Grace refused to come downstairs, even when Mrs. Chen brought her breakfast on a tray. Michael spent time with Lily and Rose, showing them the house, the pool, the gardens that Catherine had loved. They were polite and grateful, but he could see the wariness in their eyes, the expectation that at any moment they might be asked to leave. "Your house is really big," Rose said as they stood in the family room, looking out at the valley below. "It's your house too now," Michael said, "for as long as you want it to be." The twins looked at each other, that silent communication passing between them again. They'd learned not to count on promises, not to believe in permanence. But something in Michael's voice, some quality of certainty, made them want to hope. "Can we really stay?" Lily asked. "Forever," Michael said. And as he said it, he realized he meant it completely. Around noon, Grace finally appeared, creeping down the stairs like a small detective. She changed into her favorite dress, the blue one with white flowers that Catherine had bought her for Easter. Her hair was perfect, her shoes polished. She looked like she was going to a tea party or a job interview. "Daddy," she said formally, standing in the doorway of the family room, "I need to talk to you." Michael followed her into the kitchen, where Grace climbed onto her usual stool and folded her hands on the counter. She looked so much like Catherine in that moment, serious, determined, ready to negotiate. "I've been thinking," Grace said, her voice carefully controlled, "about the girls. And I don't like sharing you," Grace said honestly. "I know that's not nice, but it's true. You're my daddy, and I don't want to share." Michael felt his heart break a little. His daughter was trying so hard to be grown up, to handle a situation that would challenge adults. "Grace," he said gently, "you don't have to share me. There's enough love for everyone." "But you're gone all the time already," Grace said, and now the tears were starting. "You're always working, always traveling, and now you'll be too busy with them to spend time with me." The truth of her words hit Michael like a slap. He had been absent, had been using work to avoid the pain of loss. In trying to protect himself, he'd abandoned his daughter when she needed him most. "You're right," he said quietly. "I have been gone too much. But that's not because I don't love you. It's because I was sad about Mommy, and I didn't know how to be sad and be a good daddy at the same time." Grace considered this, her 7-year-old mind working through complicated emotions. "Are you still sad about Mommy?" "Every day," Michael said, honestly. "But I'm learning that being sad doesn't mean I can't be happy too. And having Lily and Rose here, it doesn't take away from my love for you. It just means our family is bigger." "They're not family," Grace said, but her voice lacked conviction. "What makes someone family?" Michael asked. Grace thought for a long moment. Living together? Loving each other? Taking care of each other? "Then what are Lily and Rose?" Grace was quiet, staring at her hands. Finally, she looked up at her father with eyes that were far too old for her face. "Are they going to stay forever?" she asked. "I hope so," Michael said, "but that depends on a lot of things. Right now, they just need somewhere safe to be while we figure everything out." Grace nodded slowly. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Michael said. "But while you're thinking, maybe you could try being kind to them. They've been through something really hard, just like we have." Grace slid down from her stool and walked to the doorway. She paused there, looking back at her father. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "Will you promise not to leave me again, not to go on so many trips?" Michael felt the weight of another promise, another commitment that would change his life. But looking at his daughter's hopeful face, he knew there was only one answer. "I promise," he said. "I'll work from home more. We'll spend more time together." Grace smiled for the first time that day. "Good. Because if we're going to be a bigger family, I think I need to learn how to be a big sister." And with that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving Michael to wonder if maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. The afternoon unfolded with careful steps forward and occasional stumbles backward. Grace approached the twins like a scientist studying a new species, curious but cautious, keeping her distance while observing their every move. Lily and Rose, for their part, seemed to understand the delicate dynamics at play. They stayed close to each other, speaking in whispers, trying to make themselves as small and unobtrusive as possible. They were experts at reading the moods of adults, at knowing when their presence was unwelcome. Michael watched it all with a mixture of hope and anxiety. He'd built billion-dollar companies, negotiated with world leaders, made decisions that affected thousands of employees. But navigating the emotional landscape of 3 traumatized children felt infinitely more challenging. "Would you like to see the pool?" he asked the twins after lunch, thinking that familiar childhood activities might help break the ice. Lily and Rose nodded eagerly, and Grace reluctantly followed them outside. The pool was kidney-shaped and heated, surrounded by perfectly manicured landscaping. Even in December, the water was warm and inviting. "We don't know how to swim," Rose said, staring at the water with wide eyes. "That's okay," Michael said. "Maybe Grace can teach you. She's an excellent swimmer." Grace straightened up with pride. "Mommy taught me when I was 4. I can swim the whole length without stopping." "Really?" Lily asked, and for the first time, there was admiration in her voice. "Want to see?" Grace asked, and before anyone could answer, she was kicking off her shoes and jumping into the pool fully clothed. "Grace!" Michael called out, but he was laughing. It was the most spontaneous thing his daughter had done in months. Grace swam the length of the pool with smooth, confident strokes, her dress billowing around her like a blue flower. When she reached the edge, she pulled herself out and stood there dripping, grinning with satisfaction. "That was amazing," Rose exclaimed. "You're really good," Lily added, clutching her bear tighter. Grace beamed under their praise. "I could teach you," she said, and Michael heard the first note of warmth in her voice. "But you'd need bathing suits first." "We don't have bathing suits," Rose said quietly. "We don't have much of anything," Lily added, and Michael heard the shame in her voice. Grace looked at the twins for a long moment, then at her father. Something seemed to shift in her expression. A decision being made. "Well," she said matter-of-factly, "we'll have to get you some. And clothes. And toys. And books." She paused, then added with the authority of someone much older, "Everyone needs books." "Grace," Michael said gently, "that's very generous of you." "It's not generous," Grace said, wrapping a towel around herself. "It's practical. If they're going to live here, they need stuff." The word live hung in the air, significant and loaded with possibility. It was the first time Grace had acknowledged that this arrangement might be permanent. "Can we really live here?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where else would you live?" Grace asked, and Michael heard an echo of Catherine's practical nature. "This is a big house. There's lots of room." Over the next few hours, something began to shift in the household dynamic. Grace appointed herself as the twins' guide, showing them every room, every secret passage, every hidden corner of the house. She told them about the climbing tree in the backyard, the best places to hide during games, the way the sunlight came through the kitchen windows in the morning. "This was Mommy's office," Grace said, opening the door to Catherine's study. The room had been left exactly as it was the day she died. Papers on the desk, coffee cups still sitting on the windowsill, reading glasses folded on top of a half-finished book. Michael had been avoiding this room for 2 years, but Grace walked in confidently, as if she visited regularly. She was an architect, Grace explained to the twins. She designed houses and buildings. She designed this house. Actually, "It's beautiful," Rose said, running her fingers along the edge of the drafting table. "She wanted to design a house for children," Grace continued. "A place where kids could be safe and happy. She said every child deserved a beautiful place to grow up." Michael felt his throat tighten. He'd forgotten that conversation, forgotten Catherine's dreams of designing homes for foster children, for families in need. She'd been working on plans for a children's center when she got sick. "Your mommy sounds nice," Lily said softly. "She was the best," Grace said simply. "She would have liked you." The statement was delivered with such certainty that Michael felt tears prick his eyes. Grace was right. Catherine would have loved these girls, would have welcomed them without hesitation. As evening approached, the careful détente between Grace and the twins began to solidify into something that might become friendship. They ate dinner together, Grace patiently explaining the proper way to use the cloth napkins, which fork was for salad, how to ask Mrs. Chen for seconds politely. "In this house," Grace said with the authority of a seasoned hostess, "we always say please and thank you, and we never waste food." "We never waste food anyway," Rose said quietly. "We know what it's like to be hungry." Grace looked at her with sudden understanding. "You won't be hungry here," she said firmly. "Mrs. Chen makes the best food in the world, and there's always plenty." After dinner, Michael found himself in the unusual position of having 3 children to put to bed. Grace normally handled her own bedtime routine, but tonight she lingered, clearly not wanting to miss anything. "Can I help get them ready for bed?" she asked. "Of course," Michael said, grateful for her offer. The twins' bedtime routine was simple. They had so few possessions that there wasn't much to organize. They brushed their teeth with new toothbrushes. Mrs. Chen had provided, washed their faces with expensive soap that probably cost more than they'd spent on food in a week, and climbed into the enormous bed wearing Grace's old pajamas. "The bed is so big," Lily said wonderingly. "And soft," Rose added, bouncing slightly on the mattress. Grace hovered in the doorway, watching them with an expression Michael couldn't quite read. Finally, she stepped forward. "Do you want me to read you a story?" she asked. The twins looked at each other, then nodded eagerly. Grace disappeared and returned with a stack of books, picture books, chapter books, poetry collections. "These are my favorites," she said, settling into the chair beside their bed. "But we can read whatever you want." "We don't know how to read yet," Lily admitted. "That's okay," Grace said, her voice gentle. I'll read to you, and I can teach you if you want. Mommy taught me when I was little. She opened the first book and began to read, her voice clear and confident. Michael watched from the doorway as his daughter shared her most treasured stories with two little girls who'd never owned a book of their own. When Grace finished the third story, Lily and Rose were drowsy, their eyes heavy with sleep and warmth and the unfamiliar feeling of safety. "Thank you," Rose whispered. "Thank you for reading to us," Lily added. Grace closed the book and stood up. "I can read to you tomorrow night, too, if you want." "We'd like that," Lily said. As Grace headed toward the door, she paused and looked back at the twins. "Lily? Rose? Yes? I'm sorry I was mean to you today. I was just scared, I guess." "We understand," Rose said. "We get scared too. But you don't have to be scared here," Grace said with conviction. "This is a safe house. Daddy makes sure of that." Michael felt his heart swell with pride. His daughter was growing up, learning empathy and kindness in the face of her own fear and uncertainty. After Grace went to her own room, Michael sat with the twins for a few more minutes, making sure they were comfortable, that they had everything they needed. "Mr. Michael," Lily said softly. "You can call me Michael," he said, "or whatever feels right to you." "Is Grace going to be okay with us staying?" Rose asked. Michael thought about the question, about the complexity of emotions his daughter was navigating. "Grace is learning," he said finally. "She's been the only child here for a long time, and sharing can be hard. But she's got a good heart, and she's already starting to care about you." "We like her," Lily said. "She's smart and brave." "She is," Michael agreed, "and she's lucky to have you two as friends." "Are we really going to stay?" Rose asked, the question that had been hovering all day. Michael looked at these two little girls, so brave and fragile, so grateful for the smallest kindnesses. He thought about the empty rooms in his house, the silence that had echoed through the halls for 2 years, the way Grace had smiled while reading to them. "Yes," he said firmly, "you're going to stay. This is your home now." As he turned off the lights and headed toward his own room, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of completeness. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibility, full of the sound of children's voices and laughter and life. In his bedroom, he sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photograph on his nightstand, Catherine on their wedding day, radiant and beautiful, her eyes shining with love and hope. He could almost hear her voice, could almost feel her approval. "I think you'd like them," he whispered to the photograph. "I think you'd say this is exactly what our family needed." And for the first time since her death, Michael felt like Catherine was smiling. The next morning brought new challenges and small victories. Grace woke early, as always, but instead of going straight to the kitchen, she knocked softly on the twins' door. "Are you awake?" she called out quietly. "Yes," came the whispered response. Grace opened the door and peeked inside. Lily and Rose were sitting up in bed, looking around the room as if they still couldn't believe where they were. "Good morning," Grace said, her voice formal but not unfriendly. "Did you sleep well?" "Really well," Lily said. "The bed is so comfortable." "Better than anything we've ever slept in," Rose added. Grace nodded seriously. "Good. That's important. Mommy always said a good night's sleep was the foundation of a good day." She led them downstairs to the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen was already preparing breakfast. The housekeeper smiled when she saw the three girls together. "Good morning, ladies," she said. "What would you like for breakfast?" "What do you usually have?" Lily asked Grace. "Pancakes," Grace said immediately, "or waffles, or eggs, or cereal, or oatmeal, or—" She paused, realizing she was listing an embarrassment of riches. "What do you like?" "We like everything," Rose said quickly. "We're not picky." "But what's your favorite?" Grace pressed. The twins looked at each other, that silent communication passing between them again. Finally, Lily spoke up. "We've never had pancakes," she said quietly. Grace's eyes widened. "Never?" "Never," Rose confirmed. "Mrs. Chen," Grace said with the authority of someone placing a very important order, "we need pancakes. The best pancakes ever." Mrs. Chen smiled, coming right up. As they waited for breakfast, Grace gave the twins a more detailed tour of the kitchen, explaining where everything was kept, how the coffee machine worked, which cabinet held the good china. "This is where we eat most of our meals," she said, gesturing to the breakfast nook with its built-in banquette in view of the garden. The dining room is for special occasions. What kind of special occasions? Lily asked. Grace thought for a moment. Birthdays, holidays, when important people come to visit. She paused, then added, maybe we should eat in the dining room today. You coming here is kind of special. The pancakes, when they arrived, were perfect, fluffy and golden, served with real maple syrup and fresh berries. Lily and Rose stared at their plates with wonder. They're beautiful, Rose breathed. They're just pancakes, Grace said, but she was smiling. Try them. The twins took their first bites, and their faces lit up with joy. They ate slowly, savoring every mouthful, making small sounds of appreciation that made Grace giggle. Good? She asked. The best thing we've ever eaten, Lily said seriously. Mrs. Chen is the best cook in the world, Grace declared. She makes birthday cakes that are 3 layers tall, and cookies that are still warm when you eat them, and soup that can cure any sickness. Any sickness? Rose asked. Any sickness, Grace confirmed. She made special soup for Mommy when she was sick. It didn't make her better, but it made her feel loved. The moment turned quiet, heavy with the weight of loss and memory. But instead of awkwardness, there was understanding between the 3 girls, a recognition of shared experience with grief. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in a suit and tie, his phone in his hand. He looked like he was preparing to leave for the office. Good morning, girls, he said, his voice distracted. Grace, remember you have horseback riding lessons this afternoon. I know, Daddy, Grace said, but her voice was small. Michael was already heading toward the door, his mind clearly on the day's meetings and conference calls. But something made him pause, turn back, and really look at the scene in front of him. 3 little girls sitting together at the breakfast table, sharing pancakes and conversation, in the tentative beginnings of friendship. Grace looking disappointed that he was leaving. Lily and Rose watching him with expressions that were carefully neutral, as if they were used to adults who were too busy to pay attention. He remembered his promise to Grace, his commitment to be more present. More than that, he remembered the purpose he'd felt the night before, the sense that his life had suddenly gained meaning beyond profit margins and acquisition targets. Actually, he said, putting his phone away, I think I'll work from home today. Grace's face lit up. Really? Really, Michael confirmed. I want to spend some time with our new family members. The word family hung in the air, significant and weighted with possibility. Lily and Rose looked at each other with hope, while Grace beamed with satisfaction. Can we show them the rest of the house? Grace asked. The really good parts? Of course, Michael said, loosening his tie. I'd like to see their faces when they see the library. We have a library? Rose asked. Her voice awed. We have the best library, Grace said proudly. It has a ladder that rolls around, and a reading nook with cushions and books from floor to ceiling. Can we read them? Lily asked. All of them, Michael said. That's what they're for. As they finished breakfast and prepared to explore the house, Michael felt a shift in the atmosphere. The careful politeness of the previous day was giving way to something more natural, more comfortable. Grace was taking ownership of her role as big sister, and Lily and Rose were beginning to relax into the possibility that this might really be their home. The library was indeed impressive. A 2-story room with built-in shelves, a spiral staircase, and enough books to stock a small bookstore. Catherine had been an avid reader, and she'd made sure their home reflected that passion. This is the children's section, Grace said, leading the twins to a corner filled with picture books and early readers. And this is the mystery section. And this is romance. Though Mrs. Chen says I'm too young for that. And this is biography, and this is. She continued her tour with the enthusiasm of a professional librarian, while Lily and Rose followed behind in amazement. They'd never seen so many books in one place, never imagined that a private home could contain such treasures. Can we really read any of these? Lily asked, running her fingers along the spines. Any of them, Michael confirmed. Catherine, Grace's mother, she believed that books were magic. She said they could take you anywhere in the world, show you anything you wanted to see. I want to learn to read, Rose said with sudden determination. I want to learn too, Lily added. I can teach you, Grace said immediately. I'm a really good reader. I can teach you the alphabet, and phonics, and sight words, and everything. Would you? Rose asked. Of course, Grace said. That's what big sisters do. And there it was, the moment Michael had been hoping for. Grace had claimed her role, had accepted the twins not as intruders, but as siblings to be protected and taught and loved. They spent the morning in the library, with Grace beginning impromptu reading lessons while Michael worked on his laptop nearby. He found himself stealing glances at the three girls, marveling at how naturally they'd come together, how quickly Grace had transformed from jealous only child to patient teacher. "This is the letter A," Grace was saying, pointing to a large picture book. "It makes the sound ah, like an apple." "Ah," Lily repeated carefully. "Apple," Rose added. "Very good," Grace said, her voice full of pride. "Now this is B. It makes the sound B, like in bear." "Like my bear," Lily said, holding up her raggedy stuffed animal. "Exactly like your bear," Grace confirmed. "What's his name?" "Brownie," Lily said. "Because he's brown." "That's a good name," Grace said seriously. "Names are important. They help us remember who we are." Michael felt his throat tighten at his daughter's wisdom. 7 years old, and she understood things about identity and belonging that many adults never grasped. The afternoon brought new adventures. Grace insisted on showing the twins her favorite places in the house. The window seat in the master bedroom where Catherine used to read, the pantry where Mrs. Chen kept special snacks, the closet under the stairs that was perfect for hiding during games. "This is where I go when I'm sad," Grace confided, showing them a small alcove behind the living room curtains. "It's quiet and no one can find you." "Do you get sad a lot?" Rose asked gently. "Sometimes," Grace admitted. "When I miss Mommy." "Do you get sad about your mommy?" "All the time," Lily said. "But it's getting a little better." "Being here helps," Rose added. "Having somewhere safe makes the sad feel smaller." Grace nodded wisely. "Daddy says the sad never goes away completely, but it gets easier to carry." These conversations, wise beyond their years, reminded Michael that all three girls had been forced to grow up too quickly. They'd all lost their mothers, all experienced trauma that most children never face. But they were finding comfort in each other, healing in the shared understanding of loss. As the day wore on, Michael found himself canceling meetings, postponing calls, choosing to be present for these small moments of connection. He watched Grace teach the twins to use the iPad, showing them educational games and videos. He saw them in the garden, Grace explaining which flowers were which. The twins listening with rapt attention. "These are Mommy's roses," Grace said, pointing to a bed of carefully tended bushes. "She planted them herself. Mrs. Chen takes care of them now." "They're beautiful," Lily said, reaching out to touch a bloom. "Careful of the thorns," Grace warned. "Mommy always said that the most beautiful things sometimes have sharp edges." Michael thought about Catherine's words, about the metaphor she'd probably never intended. Beautiful things with sharp edges, like love, like family, like the painful joy of opening your heart to people who might leave. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Michael realized that something fundamental had shifted in his household. The careful schedules and routines that had kept him and Grace functioning were giving way to something more organic, more alive. Grace had claimed the twins as her sisters, and they'd accepted her as their protector and teacher. The house felt full in a way it hadn't since Catherine's death, full of voices and laughter and the sound of children playing. But even as Michael felt hopeful about their little family, he knew that challenges lay ahead. Legal questions about custody, the practical matter of enrolling the twins in school, the complex process of healing from trauma, all of these would need to be addressed. For now, though, he was content to listen to Grace reading bedtime stories to Lily and Rose, to see the wonder in their eyes as they discovered the safety and comfort of a real home. "Daddy?" Grace called out as he was heading to his own room. "Yes, sweetheart?" "I think Mommy would be happy," she said. "About Lily and Rose being here. She always said our house was too big for just us." Michael felt tears prick his eyes. "I think you're right, Princess. I think she'd be very happy." As he settled into bed that night, Michael reflected on the whirlwind of the past 48 hours. 2 days ago, he'd been a workaholic widower, using business to avoid the pain of loss. Now he was the father of 3, responsible for 2 traumatized children who needed everything: love, stability, education, healing. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The morning of the 15th of January started like any other in the Harrison household. Grace woke early and padded downstairs to find Mrs. Chen preparing breakfast, while Lily and Rose emerged from their room hand in hand, still marveling at the luxury of clean pajamas in a warm house. Michael worked at the kitchen counter, his laptop open, but his attention divided between conference calls and the chatter of three little girls. It had been 3 weeks since the twins' arrival, and they'd settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Grace had fully embraced her role as big sister, appointed herself as the twins' teacher and protector. Lily and Rose had begun to relax, to believe that this wasn't temporary, that they wouldn't wake up one morning to find themselves back on the streets. Michael had kept his promise to work from home more, conducting most of his business via video calls and delegating more responsibilities to his team. The company was running smoothly without his constant presence, a realization that both relieved and humbled him. "Daddy," Grace announced as she climbed onto her usual stool, "I think Lily and Rose are ready for real school." Michael looked up from his laptop. The twins had been doing informal lessons with Grace, learning letters and numbers, devouring picture books with the hunger of children who'd been denied education. But formal schooling would require enrollment, documentation, legal guardianship, complications he'd been avoiding. "What do you think, girls?" he asked Lily and Rose. "Are you ready for school?" The twins looked at each other, that silent communication passing between them. Finally, Lily spoke up. "We want to learn," she said. "Grace says school has art class and music and a real library. And other kids to play with," Rose added hopefully. "Then we'll look into it," Michael said, making a mental note to call the elementary school. "But first, we need to take care of some paperwork." The doorbell rang before anyone could respond. Mrs. Chen hurried to answer it, returning moments later with a concerned expression. "Mr. Harrison," she said quietly, "there's a lady here to see you. She says she's from Child Services." Michael's blood ran cold. He looked at the twins, who'd gone pale at the mention of Child Services, their small hands gripping each other tightly. "Girls, go upstairs with Mrs. Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'll handle this." "Are they here for us?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let anyone take you away," Michael said firmly. "I promise." Grace slipped down from her stool and took both twins' hands. "Come on," she said with authority beyond her years. "We'll go to my room and read until Daddy fixes this." Michael watched his daughter lead the twins upstairs, marveling at her instinctive protectiveness. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked to the front door. The woman waiting in his foyer was middle-aged, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She carried a briefcase and wore the expression of someone who'd seen too much in her line of work. "Mr. Harrison? I'm Janet Rodriguez from Santa Clara County Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about 2 children who are reportedly living in your home." Michael's mind raced. Someone had reported them. But who? And why? "Of course," he said, leading her into a study. "Please, sit down." Janet settled into the leather chair across from his desk and opened her briefcase. "Mr. Harrison, we received a report that 2 unaccompanied minors are residing in your home without proper documentation or legal guardianship. Can you tell me about Lily and Rose Thompson?" Michael chose his words carefully. "They're 2 little girls who needed help. I provided them with a safe place to stay." "For how long?" 3 weeks. Janet made notes on her clipboard. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sure your intentions are good, but there are legal procedures that must be followed when caring for minor children. Do you have any documentation regarding these children? Birth certificates, medical records, proof of guardianship?" "No," Michael admitted. "They were living on the streets. Their mother had died, and they were abandoned by their stepfather." "Have you made any attempt to contact the proper authorities?" Michael felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach. "I was planning to, but I wanted to make sure they were safe first." Janet's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Harrison, I understand your concern for these children, but they cannot remain in your care without proper legal authorization. I'm going to need to take them into protective custody today." "No," Michael said immediately. "You can't take them. They're safe here, they're happy, they're part of our family." "I'm sorry, but the law is clear. These children must be placed in licensed foster care until their situation can be properly evaluated." Michael felt panic rising in his chest. How long would that take? Several weeks, possibly months. There would need to be investigations, court hearings, evaluations of their background, and your suitability as a guardian. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted their conversation. Grace appeared in the doorway, her chin raised defiantly. "Daddy?" she said. "Lily and Rose want to know if the lady is here to take them away." Janet looked at Grace with professional interest. "Are you Grace Harrison?" "Yes," Grace said, moving to stand beside Michael's chair. "And Lily and Rose are my sisters." "Your sisters?" Janet repeated, making another note. "Yes," Grace said firmly. "They live here with us. This is their home." Janet studied Grace for a moment, then looked back at Michael. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to need to speak with the children privately." "I'll get them," Grace said before Michael could respond. She returned moments later with Lily and Rose, both of whom looked terrified. They clung to each other, their faces pale, their eyes wide with the fear of children who'd learned not to trust adults in authority. "Hello, girls," Janet said gently, crouching down to their level. "I'm Miss Rodriguez. I'm here to make sure you're okay." "We're okay," Lily said quickly. "We're really okay." "This is a nice house," Janet said, looking around. "Are you happy here?" "Yes," Rose said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please don't make us leave." "Can you tell me about your mother?" Janet asked gently. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "She died. She got sick and couldn't breathe. And then she died." "And your father?" "We don't have a dad," Rose said. "Just Derek, and he said we had to go away." Janet made more notes. "What's Derek's last name?" "Walsh," Lily said. "Derek Walsh. But he's not our real dad. Where did you live before you came here?" "On the streets," Rose said simply. "We slept in doorways and under bridges. We were really cold and really hungry." Janet's expression tightened. "For how long?" "3 weeks," Lily said. "Until Mr. Michael found us in his car." "Mr. Michael has been taking care of us," Rose added. "He gives us food and warm beds, and he bought us clothes." "And Grace teaches us to read," Lily said, looking up at the older girl with adoration. "She's the best big sister in the world." Janet glanced at Grace, who had moved protectively closer to the twins. "Grace, do you like having Lily and Rose here?" "I love it," Grace said without hesitation. "They're my sisters. Real sisters. We take care of each other." "But they're not related to you," Janet pointed out. "So what?" Grace said with the fierce logic of a 7-year-old. "Families don't have to be related. They just have to love each other." Janet continued her questioning for another 20 minutes, speaking with each child separately, assessing their physical and emotional condition. Michael could see her professional demeanor softening as she interacted with the girls, but he also knew she had a job to do. Finally, she closed her notebook and stood up. "Mr. Harrison, I can see that these children are well cared for and happy, but the law requires that they be placed in authorized care. What if I started the legal process immediately?" Michael asked desperately. "What if I filed for emergency guardianship? That would be a step in the right direction," Janet said. "But until those papers are processed, the children would need to stay in foster care." "No," Grace said suddenly, her voice loud and clear. "They're not going anywhere." "Grace," Michael said gently, but she shook her head. "They're my sisters," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You can't take my sisters away." Lily and Rose had started crying too, clinging to Grace as if she could protect them from the adult world's complications. "Please," Lily begged. "We'll be good. We won't cause any trouble. We just want to stay with our family," Rose added. Janet looked at the 3 girls, at their desperate faces and intertwined hands, and Michael saw her resolve wavering. "Mr. Harrison," she said finally, "I'm going to give you 48 hours to begin the legal process. If you can show me that you filed for emergency guardianship and have an attorney working on the case, I might be able to extend the temporary placement." "And if I can't?" Michael asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then I'll have to place the children in foster care until the situation is resolved." After Janet left, the house fell into a tense silence. Grace had taken the twins back upstairs, where Michael could hear them talking quietly. He sat in his study, staring at his phone, trying to process the enormity of what he was facing. He needed a lawyer, and not just any lawyer. He needed someone who specialized in family law, someone who understood the complexities of child welfare cases. He needed to file paperwork, undergo background checks, submit to home inspections. He needed to navigate a system designed to protect children, even when that system might separate them from the only family they'd ever known. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. The Tokyo deal is falling apart. They need you on a call in an hour. Michael stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. For the first time in his career, business would have to wait. He had more important things to do. He spent the next hour on the phone with family law attorneys, finally settling on Amanda Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, who came highly recommended and had experience with emergency guardianship cases. Mr. Harrison, she said when he explained the situation, I won't lie to you. Emergency guardianship is a complex process, especially when the children aren't related to you. We'll need to prove that you can provide a stable, safe environment, that you have the financial resources to care for them, and that it's in their best interest to remain in your home. Whatever it takes, Michael said. I'll do whatever it takes. Good. I'll start preparing the paperwork immediately. We'll need character references, financial statements, medical records, home inspection reports. Can you be in my office first thing tomorrow morning? I'll be there. Michael hung up and went upstairs to find the girls. They were in Grace's room, sitting on her bed, looking like refugees from a war zone. Are we going to have to leave? Lily asked as soon as she saw him. Not if I can help it, Michael said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. I'm going to fight for you. We're going to become a legal family. What does that mean? Rose asked. It means I'm going to adopt you, Michael said. You'll be my daughters, just like Grace is my daughter. Forever. The twins looked at each other, then at Grace, then back at Michael. Hope and fear warred in their expressions. Really? Lily whispered. Really, Michael confirmed. But it might take some time, and it might be difficult. There will be people who ask you questions, who want to make sure you're safe and happy. We are safe and happy, Rose said firmly. I know that, and you know that, but we have to prove it to the courts. Grace had been unusually quiet during this conversation. Now she looked up at her father with eyes that were far too serious for a 7-year-old. Daddy, she said, what if they don't let us keep them? Michael felt his chest tighten. Then we'll keep fighting until they do. But what if? Grace, Michael interrupted gently, do you remember what Mommy used to say about worrying? Grace nodded. She said worry was like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do but doesn't get you anywhere. That's right. So instead of worrying, we're going to take action. We're going to do everything we can to make sure our family stays together. The next morning, Michael was at Amanda Chen's office at 8 o'clock sharp. The attorney was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, with the kind of focused intensity that came from years of fighting for children's rights. Let's start with the basics, she said, pulling out a legal pad. Tell me exactly how you came to have custody of these children. Michael recounted the story, finding the twins in his car, learning about their mother's death, Derek Walsh's abandonment, the 3 weeks they'd spent integrating into his family. And you made no attempt to contact authorities during this time? Amanda asked. No, Michael admitted. I was focused on making sure they were safe and cared for. Amanda made notes. That's going to be a problem. The court will want to know why you didn't follow proper procedures. Because I was thinking like a father, not a lawyer, Michael said. Those children were cold, hungry, and terrified. They needed immediate help, not bureaucratic processes. I understand your motivation, Amanda said. But we need to frame this in a way that shows you were acting in their best interest, not circumventing the law. They spent the next 3 hours filling out paperwork, documenting Michael's financial situation, outlining his plan for the children's care and education. Amanda explained the process. Emergency guardianship hearings, home inspections, psychological evaluations, background checks. How long will this take? Michael asked. If everything goes smoothly, we could have temporary guardianship within 2 weeks. Full adoption could take 6 months to a year. And if things don't go smoothly, Amanda's expression was grim, then the children could be placed in foster care while we fight for custody. I won't lie to you, Mr. Harrison. The system is designed to be cautious. The fact that you're wealthy and well-connected helps, but it's not a guarantee. Michael left the attorney's office with a stack of forms to fill out and a growing sense of urgency. He had less than 24 hours to show Janet Rodriguez that he was serious about making this legal. When he arrived home, he found the house unusually quiet. Mrs. Chen met him at the door with a concerned expression. Mr. Harrison, she said quietly, there's been a development. Michael's blood ran cold. What kind of development? A man came to the door about an hour ago. He said he was the children's stepfather, that he had legal rights to them. Derek Walsh, Michael said grimly. Where is he now? I told him you weren't home and that he needed to leave, but he said he'd be back. Michael felt rage building in his chest. Derek Walsh, the man who'd abandoned two 6-year-old children in the middle of a Detroit winter, was now claiming parental rights. Where are the girls? He asked. Upstairs in Grace's room. They heard his voice and got very upset. Michael climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his mind racing with possibilities. If Derek Walsh had legal standing as the children's stepfather, it could complicate everything. The man could claim custody, could take the twins away from the only stability they'd ever known. He found all 3 girls huddled together on Grace's bed, their faces pale with fear. Was that Derek? Lily asked as soon as she saw him. Yes, Michael said honestly. But he's gone now. Is he going to take us away? Rose whispered. Over my dead body, Michael said firmly. Grace looked up at him with fierce determination. Can we fight him, Daddy? We're going to fight him, Michael confirmed. But I need you girls to be brave, okay? This might get complicated. We're brave, Lily said, though her voice trembled. We're Harrison girls, Grace added. Harrison girls don't give up. Michael felt his throat tighten. Grace had claimed the twins as family so completely that she'd given them their surname without even thinking about it. That's right, he said. We're Harrison girls, and we stick together. Derek Walsh returned that evening, just as the family was sitting down to dinner. Michael heard the aggressive pounding on the front door and knew immediately who it was. Girls, go upstairs, he said calmly, but Daddy Grace started. Now, Michael said firmly. Mrs. Chen, please go with them. Michael opened the front door to find a man in his 30s, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Derek Walsh looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd lost whatever stability he'd once had and was now looking for someone to blame. You must be the rich guy, Derek said, his voice slightly slurred, the one who thinks he can steal other people's kids. Mr. Walsh, Michael said, keeping his voice level, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Derek said, pushing past Michael into the foyer. Those are my kids upstairs and I want them back. They're not your kids, Michael said quietly. You abandoned them. I didn't abandon nobody, Derek said loudly. I was grieving. Sarah was my wife, and when she died, I needed time to process. You threw 2 6-year-old children out into the street in the middle of winter, Michael said, his voice hard. You told them they weren't your problem. That's not how it happened, Derek said, but his eyes shifty. Look, I made some mistakes, okay? But I'm their legal guardian. I got rights. Do you? Michael asked. Because I've been looking into the legal situation, and I don't see any record of you having legal custody of Lily and Rose. Derek's face flushed red. I was married to their mother. That makes me their stepfather. Were you legally married to Sarah Thompson? Michael asked. The question hung in the air, and Michael saw the truth in Derek's expression. There had been no legal marriage, no adoption, no formal recognition of parental rights. We were going to get married, Derek said defensively. We just never got around to the paperwork. So you have no legal claim to these children, Michael said. I got more claim than you do, Derek shot back. I knew their mother. I live with them. You're just some rich guy who thinks he can buy himself a family. I'm someone who cares about their welfare, Michael said. Someone who won't throw them away when things get difficult. Derek's face twisted with anger. You think you're better than me? You think your money makes you a better man? I think my actions speak for themselves, Michael said. Yeah, well, we'll see what the courts think, Derek said. Those kids belong with family, not with some stranger. You're the stranger, Michael said. You forfeited any claim to family when you abandoned them. Derek turned to leave, then paused at the door. This isn't over, he said. I'll be back with lawyers. After he left, Michael stood in his foyer, trying to process what had just happened. Derek Walsh was going to fight for custody, not out of love for the children, but out of spite, out of a twisted sense of ownership. He climbed the stairs to find the girls huddled together in Grace's room, their faces pale with fear. Is he going to take us away? Lily asked. No, Michael said firmly. He has no legal right to you. But what if he lies to the court? Rose asked. What if he says he's a good person? Michael sat down on the bed beside them. Then we'll tell the truth. We'll tell them about how he abandoned you, about how you were living on the streets, about how you've been happy and safe here. Will they believe us? Grace asked. They'll believe us, Michael said, Because we'll have proof. We'll have medical records showing you were malnourished when you arrived. We'll have statements from people who saw you living on the streets. We'll have evidence of Derek's abandonment. And if that's not enough? Lily asked. Michael looked at these three brave little girls and felt his resolve harden into something unbreakable. Then we'll find another way, he said. Because families don't give up on each other. Ever. The next few days passed in a blur of legal preparations. Amanda Chen worked around the clock, filing emergency guardianship papers, gathering evidence, building a case for Michael's custody of the twins. I've got some good news and some bad news, she told Michael during a phone call. The good news is that Derek Walsh has no legal standing. He was never married to Sarah Thompson, never legally adopted the children, has no documented relationship with them. And the bad news? He's hired a lawyer. A bottom feeder who specializes in custody battles. They're going to argue that he has common law parental rights, that he's been the children's primary caregiver, that removing them from their cultural environment would be harmful. Michael felt his stomach drop. What does that mean? It means they're going to play the class card. They'll argue that you're a wealthy stranger trying to buy children, that the twins belong with someone from their own socioeconomic background. That's ridiculous, Michael said. Derek abandoned them. He left them to die on the streets. I know that, and you know that, but we'll have to prove it in court. And unfortunately, Derek's lawyer is good at making bad parents look sympathetic. What's our next move? We focus on the children's welfare. We document everything. Their physical condition, when you found them, their emotional state, their integration into your family. We show that they're thriving under your care. And if that's not enough, Amanda was quiet for a moment. Then we pray for a judge who cares more about children than legal technicalities. The emergency guardianship hearing was scheduled for the following week. Michael spent the time preparing his case, gathering character references, documenting the children's progress in his care. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a child psychologist, came to evaluate the twins and assess their emotional state. She spent hours with them, playing games, asking gentle questions, observing their interactions with Michael and Grace. These children have been through significant trauma, she told Michael after her evaluation. But they're remarkably resilient. They've formed strong attachments to you and Grace, and they show clear signs of feeling safe and secure in your home. What about their relationship with Derek Walsh? They're terrified of him, Dr. Martinez said bluntly. When I mentioned his name, both children showed signs of distress. They associate him with abandonment, with hunger, with fear. Returning them to his care would be traumatic. Will you testify to that? Absolutely. These children belong with you, Mr. Harrison. Anyone can see that. But as the hearing approached, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that logic and evidence might not be enough. The legal system was complicated, and Derek Walsh's lawyer was skilled at manipulating emotions and technicalities. 3 days before the hearing, Michael received a call that changed everything. Mr. Harrison, this is Detective Maria Santos with the Detroit Police Department. I understand you're involved in a custody case regarding 2 children named Lily and Rose Thompson. That's correct, Michael said, his pulse quickening. I think we need to talk. I've been investigating the death of Sarah Thompson, and I've uncovered some information that might be relevant to your case. What kind of information? The kind that suggests Derek Walsh wasn't just neglectful, he was actively harmful. Can you be in Detroit tomorrow? Michael booked a flight that afternoon, leaving Grace and the twins in Mrs. Chen's care. He arrived in Detroit that evening and met Detective Santos at the police station the next morning. Mr. Harrison, she said, leading him into an interview room, I'll be direct. Sarah Thompson didn't die of natural causes. Michael felt the blood drain from his face. What do you mean? She died of complications from pneumonia, but she should have recovered. We have medical records showing that she sought treatment multiple times, but someone kept interfering with her care. Derek Walsh? We think so. We have witness statements from neighbors who heard him screaming at her, calling her a faker, preventing her from going to the hospital. One neighbor saw him throw away her medication. Michael felt rage building in his chest. He killed her. We can't prove that in court, Detective Santos said, but we can prove that he was abusive, that he prevented her from getting medical care, that he created the conditions that led to her death. And after she died, multiple witnesses saw him throw the children out of the house. He told them they weren't his problem, that he never wanted them in the first place. Detective Santos handed Michael a thick file. This is everything we have. Witness statements, medical records, documentation of the abuse. It should be enough to destroy any custody claim he might have. Michael flew back to California that night, armed with evidence that would change everything. Derek Walsh wasn't just a neglectful stepfather. He was a man who'd contributed to their mother's death and then abandoned two grieving children. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. Michael spent Thursday night with the girls, trying to prepare them for what was to come without frightening them. Tomorrow we go to court, he told them as they sat in the living room. There will be a judge who will decide where you get to live. What if the judge says we have to go with Derek? Lily asked. That's not going to happen, Michael said firmly. I have proof that Derek hurt your mother, that he abandoned you. The judge will see that you belong here. Promise? Rose asked. Michael looked at these two brave little girls and felt his heart swell with love and determination. I promise, he said. We're a family, and families stick together. Grace crawled into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. Daddy, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay, all of us. That night, Michael lay in bed thinking about the journey that had brought them to this point. 3.5 weeks ago, he'd been a lonely widower drowning in work and grief. Now he was fighting for the right to be a father to 3 children who needed him as much as he needed them. Whatever happened in court tomorrow, he knew one thing for certain. He would never stop fighting for his family. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and cold. Michael dressed in his best suit, while Grace wore the blue dress that had been Catherine's favorite. Lily and Rose wore new dresses that Mrs. Chen had bought specially for the occasion. They wanted to look their best for the judge. Are you ready? Michael asked as they stood in the foyer. Ready, Grace said firmly. Ready? Lily and Rose echoed. As they walked out to the car, Michael felt a sense of destiny, of rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They were a family, and nothing, not Derek Walsh, not the legal system, not anyone, would change that. The courtroom was smaller than Michael had expected, but it felt enormous when they walked in. Derek Walsh sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, a thin man with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. He looked confident, predatory. Michael's family took their seats behind Amanda Chen's table. The twins sat between Michael and Grace, their small hands clasped tightly in their laps. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Williams presiding. Judge Williams was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked at the assembled group with interest, her gaze lingering on the 3 children. This is a hearing for emergency guardianship, she announced. Mr. Harrison seeks temporary custody of Lily and Rose Thompson, while Mr. Harrison Walsh claims parental rights. We'll hear from both sides. Derek's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client Derek Walsh lived with these children and their mother for 3 years. He was their primary caregiver, their father figure. After the tragic death of Sarah Thompson, he was grieving and needed time to process his loss. During this period, Mr. Harrison took advantage of the situation to essentially kidnap these children. Michael felt his hands clench into fists. Kidnap? He'd save their lives. Mr. Walsh has now recovered from his grief and wants to reclaim his daughters, the lawyer continued. He's their closest family member, and it would be traumatic to separate them from their cultural and social background by placing them with a wealthy stranger. Amanda Chen stood up. Your Honor, Mr. Walsh has no legal relationship to these children. He was never married to their mother, never adopted them, has no documentation of parental rights. Furthermore, he didn't need time to grieve. He actively abandoned 2 6-year-old children in the middle of a Detroit winter. She gestured to the file Detective Santos had provided. We have extensive documentation of Mr. Walsh's abuse of Sarah Thompson, including witness statements that he prevented her from seeking medical care, contributing to her death. After she died, multiple witnesses saw him evict the children from their home, telling them they weren't his problem. The judge looked at Derek Walsh with interest. Mr. Walsh, is it true that you were never legally married to Sarah Thompson? Derek shifted uncomfortably. We were going to get married, Your Honor. We just never got around to the paperwork. I see. And is it true that you asked the children to leave your home after their mother's death? I was grieving, Derek said, his voice defensive. I wasn't thinking clearly. You threw two 6-year-old children into the street in December, Judge Williams said, her voice cold. In Detroit, when the temperature was below freezing, I didn't mean for them to end up on the streets, Derek said weakly. Then what did you mean? Derek's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but the damage was done. The judge's expression made it clear what she thought of a man who would abandon children. I'd like to speak with the children, Judge Williams said. Privately, Michael's heart raced as Grace, Lily, and Rose were led into the judge's chambers. He could only pray that they would be able to articulate their feelings, their fears, their hopes for the future. They were gone for 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like hours. When they returned, all three girls looked calm, confident. Judge Williams resumed her seat and looked at the assembled adults. I've heard enough, she said. Mr. Walsh, you have no legal standing to claim custody of these children. You were never married to their mother, never adopted them, and you actively abandoned them after her death. Derek's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. Furthermore, she continued, the evidence of your abuse of Sarah Thompson is deeply troubling. You prevented a sick woman from seeking medical care, contributing to her death. You then threw her children into the street, telling them they weren't your problem. She turned to Michael. Mr. Harrison, while I understand your good intentions, you should have contacted the proper authorities immediately. However, it's clear that these children are thriving in your care and that they've formed strong emotional bonds with you and your daughter. Michael held his breath, waiting for the verdict. Therefore, Judge Williams said, I'm granting emergency guardianship to Mr. Harrison with the understanding that he will immediately begin proceedings for formal adoption. Mr. Walsh, you are hereby enjoined from contacting these children or attempting to interfere with their placement. Michael felt his knees go weak with relief. Grace threw her arms around the twins, and they all started crying. Tears of joy, of relief, of finally being safe. Thank you, Your Honor, Michael managed to say. Don't thank me, Judge Williams said with a slight smile. Thank those three girls. They made it very clear where they wanted to be. As they left the courtroom, Derek Walsh made one last attempt to salvage his case. This isn't over, he called out. I'll appeal. I'll fight this. Judge Williams, who was still within earshot, turned around. Mr. Walsh, if you continue to harass this family, I'll hold you in contempt of court. These children have suffered enough. Leave them alone. Outside the courthouse, Michael knelt down to hug all three girls. We did it, he said. We're officially a family. Forever? Lily asked. Forever, Michael confirmed. Even if Derek tries to take us away again? Rose asked. Derek can't take you away anymore, Michael said. You're my daughters now, all three of you. Grace beamed with pride. I told the judge that we're Harrison girls, she said. And Harrison girls stick together. What did you tell her? Michael asked. We told her that we love you, Lily said, and that this is our home. We told her that you take care of us, Rose added, and that you read us bedtime stories and make sure we're not scared. And I told her that you're the best daddy in the world, Grace said, and that Mommy would be happy that our family is bigger now. Michael felt tears streaming down his face. I love you girls so much. We love you too, Daddy, they said in unison. As they walked to the car, Michael reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. He'd gone from a lonely widower to the father of three amazing girls. His house had gone from a mausoleum to a home filled with laughter and love. There would be challenges ahead. The formal adoption process, helping the twins heal from their trauma, blending their family completely. But they would face those challenges together as a family. Daddy, Grace said as they drove home, can we have a party tonight to celebrate? What kind of party? Michael asked. A family party, she said, with cake and ice cream and movies. And popcorn, Lily added. And pizza, Rose said. And staying up late, Grace finished. Michael laughed. A family party sounds perfect. As they pulled into their driveway, Michael looked at the house that had felt so empty for so long. Now it looked like what it had always been meant to be, a home for a family, a place where children could grow up safe and loved. Welcome home, girls, he said. Welcome home, Daddy, they replied. And for the first time since Catherine's death, Michael felt like he was truly home. 6 months had passed since the custody hearing, and the Harrison household had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Spring had given way to summer, and the house buzzed with the constant activity of three children who had discovered the joy of being truly, safely home. Michael stood in the kitchen on a warm July morning, watching through the window as Grace taught Lily and Rose to play tennis on the court Catherine had insisted they install. The twins had grown taller, their faces fuller, their smiles coming more easily. They'd started calling him Daddy without prompting, and the sound still made his heart skip a beat. "Mr. Harrison," Mrs. Chen said, appearing beside him with a cup of coffee. "The adoption agency called. They want to schedule the final home visit next week." Michael nodded, taking the coffee gratefully. The adoption process had been thorough. Background checks, psychological evaluations, home inspections, interviews with teachers and neighbors. But every hurdle had been cleared, every requirement met. Soon, Lily and Rose would be legally his daughters, not just in his heart but on paper. The phone rang, interrupting the peaceful morning. Michael glanced at the caller ID and frowned. It was Amanda Chen, his attorney. She rarely called unless there was a problem. "Amanda," he said, answering on the third ring. "What's going on?" "Michael, I need you to sit down," she said, her voice tense. "I just got a call from the adoption agency. There's been a development." Michael's stomach dropped. What kind of development? They've located a potential biological relative of the twins, someone who might have a legal claim to custody. The coffee cup slipped from Michael's hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. "That's impossible. The twins said they had no family." "I know. But the agency ran DNA tests through the national database as part of the adoption process. They found a match, a close relative who's been in the system for years, looking for missing family members." Michael felt the world tilting beneath his feet. "Who?" "A man named James Harrison. He's been searching for his missing daughters for 7 years." The phone slipped from Michael's numb fingers. James Harrison. The name hit him like a physical blow, bringing with it a flood of memories he'd tried to bury. "Michael?" Amanda's voice came through the speaker. "Are you there?" "I'm here," Michael managed to say. "Amanda, did you say James Harrison?" "Yes. Do you know him?" Michael closed his eyes, his mind racing back 15 years to a different life, a different family. "He's my cousin, my father's brother's son." "Your cousin?" Amanda's voice was sharp with surprise. "Michael, what aren't you telling me?" "James disappeared 7 years ago," Michael said quietly. "He was struggling with addiction, couldn't hold a job, was in and out of trouble. My uncle cut him off, said he was done enabling him. We all assumed he'd either gotten clean and started over somewhere, or he died," Amanda finished. "Yeah." Michael looked out the window at the girls, still playing tennis, oblivious to the conversation that was about to shatter their world. "Amanda, if James is alive, if he's really their father, then he has parental rights," Amanda said grimly. "Michael, there's no doubt James Harrison is their biological father. The DNA is a 99.7% match. What happens now?" he asked. "The adoption agency is required to contact him. He has the right to petition for custody, to challenge the adoption. And if he does? Michael, I'll be honest with you. Biological parents have enormous legal advantages. If James Harrison is clean, employed, and has been actively searching for his daughters, he could win a custody battle." Michael felt his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. "How long do we have?" "The agency will contact him tomorrow. If he decides to pursue custody, we could be looking at a court date within weeks." After Amanda hung up, Michael sat in his kitchen, staring at the broken coffee cup on the floor. How could he tell the girls? How could he explain that their safe, secure world might be about to change again? That evening, after the girls were in bed, Michael sat in his study, staring at a photograph on his desk. It was from Grace's birthday party the month before. All 4 of them crowded around a cake, their faces bright with laughter. He opened his laptop and began searching for information about James Harrison. Michael found an interview James had given to a local newspaper about his search for his missing daughters. "I made a lot of mistakes," James was quoted as saying. "I was a drug addict, couldn't hold a job, couldn't take care of myself, let alone my kids. But I've been clean for 3 years now, and not a day goes by that I don't think about my girls." The next morning brought the call Michael had been dreading. Amanda Chen's voice was grim as she delivered the news. I spoke with James Harrison an hour ago, she said. He's flying to California tomorrow. He wants to meet with you before he sees the girls. What did you tell him? That you'd call him back. Michael? He seems like a decent man. He's been clean for 3 years, has a steady job as a mechanic. He's been working with a private investigator since he got out of rehab, trying to find his daughters. Set up the meeting, Michael said. I want to look him in the eye. He found the girls in the playroom, engaged in an elaborate game involving dolls and blocks. Girls, he said carefully, I need to talk to you about something important. They looked up at him with innocent, trusting faces, and Michael felt like he was about to destroy their world. Do you remember much about your life before you came to live with us? He asked. Not much, Lily said. We remember Mommy and being cold and hungry. Do you remember your daddy? Your real daddy? The twins frowned in concentration. Mommy said our daddy went away before we were born, Lily said. What if he could take care of you now? Michael asked gently. What if he wanted to be your daddy again? Grace looked at Michael with sharp eyes. Daddy? What are you saying? I'm saying that someone has found us. Someone who says he's Lily and Rose's biological father. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Grace's face went pale, and the twins moved closer together, their eyes wide with fear. Is he going to take us away? Lily whispered. I don't know, Michael said honestly, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, I love you. You're my daughters, and that will never change. But we don't want another daddy, Rose said, tears starting to fall. We want you. Grace stood up abruptly, her small hands clenched into fists. No, she said firmly. They're not going anywhere. This is their home. We're their family. Michael pulled all 3 girls into his arms, holding them tight as they cried. I'm going to fight for you, he said. I'm going to fight for all of us. The next day, Michael waited in his office as James Harrison arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. Michael opened the door to find a man who looked like a ghost from his past. James Harrison, but older, thinner, marked by years of struggle and recovery. Hello, Michael. James said quietly. Thank you for agreeing to see me. They sat in Michael's study. 2 men who'd once been close, now separated by years and circumstances, and the fate of 2 little girls. I heard about Catherine, James said. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Michael studied his cousin's face. James, before we talk about anything else, I need to know, are you really clean? Really committed to staying that way? I am, James said without hesitation. I've been in NA for 3 years, have a sponsor, go to meetings 3 times a week. I have a job, an apartment, a life that I'm proud of. What happened? 7 years ago, you just disappeared. I was using heavily, couldn't hold a job, was in and out of jail. Sarah took the girls and left me. She said she couldn't watch me destroy myself anymore. By the time I sobered up enough to realize what I'd lost, she was gone. You've been looking for them ever since? Since the day I got clean. When I got the call from the adoption agency yesterday, James's voice broke. I can't describe what it felt like to know they were alive, that they were safe. They're more than safe, Michael said quietly. They're loved. They're part of a family. I know. James looked out the window at the girls playing in the garden. I can see that. Grace is beautiful, Michael. She looks just like Catherine. They don't remember you, Michael said gently. They were very young when Sarah left. I know. I'm prepared for that. James turned back to Michael. I'm not here to destroy their lives, Michael. I'm here to be their father. What are you proposing? I want to take them home to Phoenix. I want to be their father. Give them the life they deserve. They have a life, James. They have a home, a family, a future. You want to uproot them from everything they know? I want to give them their father back, James said firmly. Michael took a deep breath, about to make the most difficult offer of his life. Stay here. Be part of their lives. We're family, James. We can make this work. You want me to live here? I want you to be their father without destroying their family. Move to California, get a job here. Be their father, spend time with them, be part of their lives. But let them stay here, in the home they know, with the family they've built. James stared at him. You'd do that? You'd let me be part of their lives? Because I love them, Michael said simply. and because sometimes loving someone means making sacrifices for their happiness. "Can I see them?" James asked suddenly. Michael walked to the window and gestured for the girls to come inside. As they ran toward the house, Michael felt his heart break a little. The girls burst through the door, stopping short when they saw the stranger. "Girls," Michael said gently, "this is James Harrison. He's my cousin, and he's your biological father." "Hello, girls," James said softly. "You probably don't remember me, but I'm your daddy, your first daddy." "We already have a daddy," Rose said, her voice small but firm. "I know, but I'm your daddy too." "Why did you go away?" Grace asked, her voice challenging. James knelt down to their level. "Because I was sick. I had a disease that made me do bad things. I had to get better before I could come back to you." "Are you better now?" Lily asked. "I am. I've been working very hard to get better, to become the daddy you deserve." "But we don't need another daddy," Rose said. "We have Daddy Michael." The girls looked confused and frightened, and Michael's heart ached for them. "Can we talk to Daddy Michael alone?" Grace asked. After James left the room, the girls crowded around Michael. "Daddy, we don't want to go away," Lily said immediately. "You're not going anywhere," Michael said. "This is your home. I'm your daddy. That's not changing." "But what about him?" Grace asked. "James is your biological father," Michael explained. "He's been sick for a long time, but he's better now, and he wants to be part of your lives." "Do we have to love him?" Lily asked. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do," Michael said, "but he's family, and he loves you very much. Maybe you could try to get to know him?" They called James back in, and the next hour was awkward but not hostile. James showed them photos from when they were little, told them about their mother, shared stories of their early childhood. The girls listened politely but remained reserved. Over the next few days, James spent time with the girls, gradually building a relationship with daughters who didn't remember him. The process was slow and sometimes painful, but there were moments of connection. "I've been thinking about what you said," James told Michael on the fourth day, "about staying here, being part of their lives without uprooting them. And I want to do it. I want to move to California. Be near the girls. I don't want to disrupt their lives any more than I already have." Michael felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. These girls are my priority. If staying here is what's best for them, then that's what I'll do." "What about custody, legal arrangements?" "I want to share custody with you. I want to be their father, but I want you to be their father too." That evening, they sat the girls down and explained the new arrangement. James would be moving to California, would be spending time with them regularly, would be part of their lives on a permanent basis. "What should we call you?" Lily asked. "What feels right to you?" "Maybe you could be Daddy James?" Rose suggested. "I'd like that," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "So we have two daddies?" Lily asked. "You have two daddies," Michael confirmed, "and one big sister, and one house full of people who love you." Over the next few weeks, they worked out the practical details. James found a job at a local auto shop and rented a small apartment nearby. Amanda Chen worked out a legal arrangement that gave both men joint custody. The transition wasn't always smooth, but gradually, they found their rhythm. James would pick the girls up from school twice a week, attend their activities, join them for family dinners. The girls began to relax into the new arrangement, calling James Daddy James and sharing their lives with him. 3 months after James's arrival, they faced their first major test when Lily developed pneumonia and had to be hospitalized. Michael was out of town, leaving James to handle the emergency. "I don't know what to do," James confessed over the phone. "She's so sick and she's asking for you." "You're her father," Michael said firmly. "You can do this." James spent the night at the hospital, holding Lily's hand, reading to her, singing the songs Sarah used to sing. When Michael arrived the next morning, he found James asleep in the chair beside Lily's bed. "Daddy James took really good care of me," Lily told Michael. "That's what daddies do," Michael said, meeting James's eyes. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized. Both Michael and James were named as the girls' legal fathers. Judge Williams smiled as she signed the papers. "This is one of the most unique family structures I've ever seen," she said, "but it's also one of the most loving." As they left the courthouse, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he'd been a lonely widower. Now he was part of a complex, loving family that had grown beyond what he'd ever imagined possible. "Daddy," Grace said as they walked to the car, "can we add something to our family motto?" "What's that?" "Harrison girls stick together no matter what. But I think we should add, and Harrison boys too." Michael looked at James, who was grinning. "I think that's a perfect addition. Harrison girls and boys stick together no matter what," all three girls chanted in unison. "No matter what," Michael and James echoed. As they drove home together, Michael felt a sense of completeness he hadn't experienced since Catherine's death. His family was bigger now, more complex, but also stronger. They'd faced challenges that would have broken other families, but they'd emerged more united than ever. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Michael caught James's eye across the table. They'd started as cousins, become strangers, and now they were family in the truest sense of the word. Because they'd both learned something important: love doesn't diminish when it's shared, it multiplies. And sometimes, the most beautiful families are the ones that are built not just on biology or law, but on choice, on commitment, on the daily decision to love and care for each other. The Harrison family was proof of that truth. They were a family by choice, by love, by the determination to stick together no matter what challenges they faced. And they were perfect exactly as they were.